Hi everybody, it's Heather with Illuminations, and today I'm going to teach you all my tips and tricks to Kumihimo. I have been teaching Kumihimo for probably 20 years, and I have learned a lot along the way to make it easy, simplify it, so everybody can do it. So let's get started. Okay, my number one first trick to Kumihimo, making it easy, is going to be the board that you use. I like to use the small board. The reason being is they also make them with a larger hole now, and I carry these on my website. But the reason I like using a smaller board is because you can get your fingers to easily to the center of the board to put pressure on the strings. Because if there is one mistake that is always made in Kumihimo, it is that you pull your strands too tight and they're taut against the top of the board. You never want your strings to look like that when doing Kumihimo. You want your strings to act like this is a pull. You want your strings to almost go at an angle like a slide into the pull. And the reason I like the small board is because you can get your thumb there easily to put the pressure on the strings. It is very important to put the pressure on the strings, and then the braid comes out the bottom. So with that being said, you never want to tighten your strings. What that does is it makes the stitch too tight, and then what it does is it pulls a bead in on the stitch, so it's not a nice round stitch. So number one tip is small board with a large hole. The large hole also enables you to use a variety of bigger beads in Kumihimo, because really you can do Kumihimo with anything you put your mind to it. The kitchen sink, you can make Kumihimo out of any beads, large, small, whatever you want. But they used to have a tiny little hole, so it would be hard to fit larger beads down in there. But now they make a small board with a large hole, which enables us to do a lot with Kumihimo. Tip number 2 is going to be measuring made easy. First thing we do is I use Nylon, or it's also called Nylon, whichever. They're the same thread, just a different manufacturer. It is a nylon coated silk thread. So during my teaching of Kumihimo, I had a lot of people say, oh, well, I always heard Kumihimo was 8 strands. It actually is, and the way it was taught originally is that you would take 8 strands and start with a knot, and that is what you would pull through the center of your board. But I figured out a way to end with a nice, neat knot on both sides. So how I do that is I cut 4 strands of my Nylon or Nylon. What I do, the trick to measuring is any length that you want. So let's say we want a 7-inch bracelet. You are going to take any length that you want times 6 to get your desired length. So to make a 7-inch bracelet, we're going to say 7 times 6, and we're going to cut 4 of these at 42 inches long. So 4 strands of Nylon or Nylon at 42 inches long. And then what you're going to do is you're going to load 7 inches of size 6 seed beads. Now I start with a knotted seed bead to keep my beads on, just a stopper bead. And then I load 7 inches of size 6 seed beads. And then I come over here to the opposite end and double knot a seed bead so your beads can move on the strand. So let's say that you wanted to make a necklace. If you wanted an 18-inch necklace, so you would take 18 times 6, which would be 108 inches. That is a super long string, and then you would load 18 inches of beads on that strand of 108 inches. Well, your beads would be hanging across the street. So they make these neat little things called bobbins. And the way these work is you take your seed bead, your thread, and you're going to wrap it around once and hold on to it, just like that. And then what you're going to do is just wrap your thread, no beads, just wrap your thread. And you do this after you load your Kumihimo board. And then you just pop that little lip down, just like that. And when you start your braid, you'll have all these hanging from the bottom of your board. And if you need more thread, you just simply pull on the bobbin and it lets more thread out. So that is how you measure for Kumihimo. Now I will give you another little trick that I do. When I make a Kumihimo necklace, I don't do all Kumihimo. Like, I don't put 18 inches. What I'll do is I'll do like a long bracelet. I'll do 10 inches. So I would cut my thread at 60 inches and I would put 10 inches of size 16 beads on there. That way you are getting a Kumihimo that comes from collarbone to collarbone. And then what I do instead of adding a clasp on the end is I actually tie ribbon to it. I will put chain on there. I will do bigger beads and crimp to it because Kumihimo is a lot of work to be at the back of your neck, and it takes a long time to make an 18-inch necklace. So if you want a different look, make an extra long bracelet, like I said, 10 inches, and then leave the loop where you would attach the clasp and do something fun with the rest of it. So get creative with it. So with using the 4 strands, I'm just going to go through and show you how you would load the board. What you're going to do is you're going to take your 7 inches and you're going to make like a horseshoe and just hang your finger right there on that bead so you have right there. And then what you're going to do is you are going to find your center bead and you are going to drop half your beads to one side and half your beads to the other, just like that. And then what you're going to do is you will take your board. And the great thing about this board is you see all these numbers, you don't need them. That is the best part about it. Even if you want to flip your board over and make dots over there, you can do it if the numbers distract you. But the great thing is you do not have to pay attention to your number in the basic Kumihimo stitch. Now, there are lots of Kumihimo stitches, and some of them you will need numbers, but on the basic Kumihimo stitch, all you need to pay attention to is your threads. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead, they have like little teeth, and you're gonna put the strand right in there across the board. Now notice how I have my Kumihimo. You see the dots. That is how you are going to load your strands. I say 1 railroad down, 1 across. Now remember that, because when I do my video next week with Kumihimo 101 and I go through all the steps, I'm going to talk about the different railroads and how you can load them to get different textures and color designs in your Kumihimo stitch. Okay, so here is how your board is supposed to be loaded. You have 1 strand on each side of the dot, just like that. Now, this is when I add my weight, which I just use one of my glass beads. You can use a fishing weight. You just don't want it to be too heavy. So what I'm going to do here is make a basically Christmas hook. I'm going to take that up like that, and I'm going to bend this over. Then what you're going to do is you are going to go, it doesn't matter which corner you come up, but you're going to come up through a corner and you're going to cross all your strands just like that and then pinch it. So you see how I pinched it? Okay, so here I'm going to adjust the camera and I'm going to show you how you want your strands to look. Remember when I said it was easy to get to the center? You want to take your thumb and press down. This is how you want your strands to look. See how they're dipping down in there? See how they have that dip right there? You always want your strands to have that dip. That is very, very, very important to get a good Kumihimo stitch. Okay, so another trick is, you see that I tied the weight on with about 3 to 4 inches of 20 gauge wire. When we start Kumihimo, we are simply going to start with a braid without dropping beads. What this is going to do is it is going to knot to that wire. Well, that is going to leave a nice clean end on that end. And then what we'll do when we finish dropping all our beads and finish our braid, we are going to lay that other piece of wire right across the board and braid it in. What this does is it allows us to have a nice clean braid on both ends so we don't start with that 8 strands and that big knot. That is going to enable us to use any cap or large hole bead we want to cover up that braid to end it. So that is my big trick, to end with 2 neat ends, and that is why I use 4 long strands instead of starting with 8. It just leaves a clean end on both, and you can use anything you want to finish it. I've even wrapped wire around it. It just really opens up ending the Kumihimo to doing whatever you want instead of having to worry about a large knot on one side and then a small neat knot on the other. So now I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to tell you about all the tools you need. Okay, so all the tools you're going to need for basic Kumihimo. Number one, you're going to need your silk thread with a nylon coating. It's either an S-lon or a C-lon. Either one work perfect. You're going to need some good cutting scissors. You are going to need bobbins if you go long with it. You're going to need some good nippers because we're going to do some wire wrapping on each end. You're going to need your round nose to make the loop when we wire wrap. And I always like to wire wrap with bent nose. It gives you good posture when you're wrapping, and it allows you to get tension and get in there close and tuck the wire. And then anytime you do wire wrapping, it's always good to have some nylon coated pliers around. I always refer to these as slippers on the carpet because you can manipulate your loop if you need it to go in a different direction without making any dents or weakness in the wire. So nylon coated pliers, whenever you're doing any type of wire wrapping, you want to have those around. And then of course your size 6 seed beads, and then you can use anything. You'll notice in my Kumihimos, I like to use pip beads, and sometimes I like to use crystals, and sometimes I like to use top drilled rounds. So you can really get creative with Kumihimo with your different types of beads. Another thing I always like to have on hand is an adjustable clasp. This toggle is going to allow you to fit a small, medium, and a large wrist. The thing with Kumihimo is if you go too long, there's no fixing it. You can make it into a necklace, you can make it into something else. But if you make it too short, you can always do something decorative on the ends. Like here, I added a aluminum coil with an accent bead. You can do a Kumihimo cap with an accent bead. There's all different ways you can add length to it, but once you go too long, you really can't back the stitch up. So what I like to do is I always like to put an adjustable clasp on there, especially if you're selling your jewelry or giving it as a gift. You want to make sure it's the right length for someone. So this allows you to fit a variety. So my suggestion is to go at like 6 3/4 inches on your beads when you load them, and then use an adjustable toggle. That is going to fit a variety of people. Okay, so that is all my Kumihimo tips and tricks. This is a prelude to my video that I will be releasing next week that is going to teach anybody that doesn't know how to do Kumihimo A to Z. It is my Kumihimo 101 made easy. So I am going to teach you how to make different texture patterns with different beads, and then I will be offering my kits. So I will have everything you need to make these bracelets right here on my website right here. So definitely check out my website because I plan on growing my kit business. I have kits for all my Kumihimo bracelets, and I will be adding to them weekly. I'm going to start small in the beginning, so I will only have a limited amount. But of course, if a kit is really popular, I will reorder and reoffer. But to start out, I'm only going to have 10 to 12 kits. So if you see one you like, definitely grab it, because with all the things going on in the world today and not being able to get product, I can't always get the same exact beads, but I will try if one is really popular. So definitely check that out and stay tuned for my Kumihimo Made Easy video. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.